Hello there, everyone. This is Elliott Terrell with Magical Thinking, brought to you by artofmagic.com. I got to sit down with Rob Zabrecky today, and it was awesome. It's kind of a shorter episode, which is fine, and we will definitely be doing it again in the future. Rob, if you don't know, is one of my favorite performers. He's one of the best magic acts I've ever seen, and some of the people that I admire consider him one of their favorite magicians alive and performing today. If you have any chance to see him, I highly suggest that you do it. He performs at conventions and gatherings, and he does shows, and he's so incredible. His magic is hilarious. He's very thoughtful about his timing and about his trick selection, and his character is so I don't know how to describe it. It's one of the best shows I've ever seen, and I was very happy to sit down and talk to him about character and presentation and what his life was like before doing magic. He was the front man for a punk band called Possum Dixon. And there's really some incredible, fun, intelligent conversation. Rob is a real great guy and such a nice guy to sit down and talk to, very knowledgeable, and really, again, one of the best performers I've ever seen. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram. Find us A Sense of Mystery, at A Sense of Mystery. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter, Art of Magic. Anyway, get into the episode, enjoy it. Email me at podcast@artofmagic.com to let me know what you think and maybe who some of our guests should be going down the road. Anyway, have fun. See you later.
Yeah, that's it. It's just not. So, I should just put them on YouTube is the answer. And I talked to Max Maitman, Eugene Berger, Milt Larson, all those guys. A few which have passed.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know Carl Ballantine, the great comedy magician.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I talked to him just a few months before he passed. Unfortunately, he wasn't very lucid. I'm like, so Carl, when was the first time you visited the Magic Castle? He says, 1943. Well, the club opened in 63. So he wasn't there in 93.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you said you did like about 80
85, I think, was the last number I counted. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I just got fed up with it. The part of the point was I wanted to, like what you said, kind of absorb a snapshot into these people that I kind of knew and wanted to get to know a little bit. And the other half was I wanted to get comfortable being on camera. Mm-hmm. I was doing a little more acting, and I thought there's no other way to get that experience than just to have a camera in front of you and learn how to treat it as if it's just another person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or the same goes with a microphone. I mean, when you're doing interviews, sometimes people clam up and they get weird and they don't, they get self-conscious or whatever. They've got little tics you'll hear, and
they're like hyper aware of themselves.
Too much, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So I knew that was going to be one way to help sort of...
Your own?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really cool. There you go.
Thank you very much. I realized that was the whole process.
You're welcome.
Wow.
It's my pleasure. I like doing it. It's a little bit of a performance.
It is, right? Yeah.
I get to put on a show.
Yeah, no kidding. So what is this called? What method is this that you just made?
So this is a pour over.
Yeah.
And these are Ethiopian beans that Dave roasted himself. And so, yeah.
Damn.
I hope it's good.
Well, it's going to be great.
Well, cool. So, I don't know. I ran over here and hit record because I was so fascinated by
Oh, God. Well, then I think I said everything. What else? What's left?
Oh, there's a ton of stuff. Come on.
There is?
So Dana DeVergini, and they
Oh, yeah.
they saw your interview with Weber, and loved it. And so I was like, well, what are some of the things you want me to talk to Rob about? And that was definitely one of them. Is like, Dave specifically said your inner weirdness, and then how your musical background, being the frontman for Possum Dixon, influenced your character creation and the way that you perform and things like that. So we have plenty
That's
of
a
time.
lot. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's a
Wow.
ton. You know,
Yeah.
you can go anywhere you want with that.
Great.
Or I can sort of hone in and
No, those are all topics that I love talking about, because I discover things about, myself when I'm talking about it. I don't always think about this stuff until
you're saying it.
Yeah, you're saying it until it's sort of verbalized. Like Weber that was a sort of a dream come true. Like so many of us admire Weber for so many reasons. And when Max, the reason that Weber did that interview is because Max was sick. He got appendicitis, so he had to drop out of it. He was going to perform his one-person show, Thinking in Person, and his appendix exploded. So he's off to the hospital, and suddenly there's this 2-hour spot in the middle of set prime time, convention time.
Sure.
And I don't know whose idea it was, Richard or maybe I think Weber said, "Hey, I'd like to do an interview. Let's do that instead." And so I was just beside myself, because I just think he's one of the greatest minds in magic. So anyway, I said, well, here's a few things that we might want to talk about, thinking that I would somehow guide the genius of Weber. And he looks them over and he puts them in his pocket. And the things that we talked about were so different and so revealing. I just couldn't believe it. We were talking about like the rhythm of the people that people perform in.
Yeah.
And I just never thought about that. I might have considered it. I think it's one of those things that you subconsciously think about when you're working on an act and you're delivering your script. But I performed a piece and he went back and said, okay, let's look at this again. And he talked about where the metronome was sort of like dropping here, and then when it got intense, that would pick up a little bit, and then drop back down. And you're like, who thinks about that?
Yeah. Well, that's the true art. That's the artistic level. And it can even be broken down into, just to use a symphony, for example. You have a middle school band. They're keeping the same tempo. But when all of that is working in harmony, the conductor can pick up and slow down, and crescendo and decrescendo. And that's... so I saw you for the first time last weekend, 2 weekends ago, in San Diego. And... yeah, it was the best show I'd ever seen.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, And Dave, if he were sitting here, he would say that you are his favorite magician, favorite act. Like,
that's really nice to hear, and come from Dave, who I admired those guys and always did from day one. In fact, I remember there was this chatter about these two kids from San Diego, and they were doing things with cards that nobody was doing, and. I kind of craned my head into this conversation that I think it was Mike Caveney and Jim Steinmeier and a couple of these guys, my real heroes in magic.
Sure.
And they said, these guys are going to come down and do a set for us in the Pillar. And I was like, I'm not missing this. So I stayed close and hovered in the back and watched Mike and I can't remember, maybe it was John Carney and a couple others. And they're kind of looking at him like they have two heads, because they came from this, Mike and John and Jim, these guys come from these solid backgrounds of the act.
yeah.
Everything's the act.
Yes.
And suddenly, and they were not saying a word and performing these impossible acrobatics with playing cards. And so it was really an interesting moment. Like, this is a little bit of history in my own, from my own perspective, but actually watching the young and the old guys sort of, not that Caveney's an old guy, but older guys.
Well, but it's like the physical representation of the myth.
Yeah, and it was right there. It was really cool.
Wow. Yeah. That's so cool. That must have been years ago.
It was. I wonder if they would remember that. If you're listening, Dan and Dave, if you remember, let me know. Let me know.
I'll ask him.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, no, that's really cool, and maybe we can. I'll ask him, and they'll try and figure it out. We can add that in somewhere.
Yeah, it was cool.
So, oh gosh, okay, we have a lot of things to talk about. Okay, so let's start off at the beginning if you're comfortable, and by the beginning I mean like being in Possum Dixon, being the front man for a band. And all that sort of rock and roll life entails, and then how that shaped who you are as a creative person, and then we'll get into the magic stuff. But I'm just interested in who you are as like how you look at the world.
Okay.
So feel free to tackle that.
Well, I mean, I could say that, like so many kids growing up in the San Fernando Valley in the 70s, the dream was to be in a rock band. That was my world. It was Cheap Trick and Kiss and sort of big rock, big arena rock bands were like, that was my first passion. I think some kids fell into magic or classical music or whatever, or I don't, the other arts. For me, it was music. It was like, it started off on the AM radio, hearing music in my mom's car and just going, wow, it's completely blowing my mind. Such an aversion to just whatever, being a little kid. Not that growing up in Burbank was a relatively easy place to grow up and a nice place to grow up, but that was the first portal into another world. It was like the cartoons or something, like Saturday morning cartoons. So I fell in love with it and just thought, if I could, that was the dream. I'd just lay in bed at night, go, wow, one day I'd like to play music. And I think by high school I assembled a garage band with some friends, meeting in my buddy's garage after school and banging out, music that was easy to play and fun. And I really had my sights on music. So from high school until turning, drinking age 21, that's when I formed the band with some friends from junior college. And it was full steam, like let's make our dreams sort of come true, as cheesy as that sounds. And our expectations were very low, because at that point we were interested in the idea of like the punk ethos that was in Hollywood and in the music community, that was not happening on Sunset Strip with the big hairspray bands, but more of a DIY do-it-yourself culture that was kicking around in a dozen or so clubs and really worldwide, but I was focused in on it here in LA. So our goal was to play a place at 3rd and Hewitt downtown called Al's Bar. It's the crown jewel of the underground. If you could play there, like, holy shit, you had made it.
Yeah.
That was really it for us. And before long, we booked a show opening for Courtney Love's band Hole, who was totally unknown at that time, and I'd known from the LA Underground, and another band I was an ardent follower of called the Imperial Butt Wizards. One of the greatest bands ever. They got banned from every club because they would start fires. They would set fire to stuffed animals and dress in costumes, and they were just like completely over the top and punk in a way that they were just bombastic, and they had such a point of view that was only their thing. It was very singular and cool, and you never knew. It was wildly unpredictable. So we just loved that model of doing our thing and finding our own sort of way to do that. And that was the rule of having the band, was just, there were no rules. We're making music that we wanted to hear for our friends. And it started off like super theatrical. Our first show, I had this Ken doll that I was going to deliver this monologue to and then destroy the Ken doll. And I had a BB gun, and I shot the Ken doll, and there was a tambourine player, and it was really insane. I mean, it was like the beginning. The first handful of shows were just a total mess. They were scattered, and we were interested in early John Waters films. I don't know if you know the early work of John Waters, but they were really kind of punk in a way that they were thinking for themselves, and they were making these bizarre movies just for them and their friends, and it was super interesting to us. So we were kind of using these models of like that, and left the Warhol 60s and that kind of what was going on in New York with the way that Warhol was looking at the world, and that with punk, the idea of like the Lower East Side, CBGB, the Ramones and Blondie and groups like that were just, those bands were all very different from one another, but they all had a kind of this idea about playing their own kind of rock. So that was for us that was the idea, and it started off that way anyway. And then as time went on, we became more formulaic, just like so many bands did. And by the time we signed a record deal with Interscope Records, had definitely become by all standards a pop group. While grunge was happening, which was our own sort of thing, we were kind of had like I guess our aesthetic was like a disheveled college student. Had been up on drugs for a few days, but hadn't really gone to college. It was like the thing. Geek rock, I guess they were calling it early on. And then later bands like Weezer and a myriad of other groups sort of appropriated that. Sure. They refined that that look. But early on, we were kind of, I guess we were one of the only bands that had that aesthetic. And we stood out in that way because we were like these. Our friend wrote about us, and she said, "Possum Dixon's like My Three Sons if Lou Reed directed it." And that really did kind of describe our whole thing. It was like we looked clean cut, but we were not clean cut. So anyway, that we worked super hard though, and really embraced making our own flyers and defining kind of this almost sci-fi 50s sort of look with some of our graphics. And I was at the helm of screening T-shirts and silk screening stickers, and always just making stuff.
There's so much creativity happening in this.
Yeah, I mean,
atmosphere.
I made a book called Music for Deaf People. It was my first little chapbook of poetry in 1992, and it contained lyrics to Possum Dixon songs and just any ideas. Like I was working in a crummy mailroom, and so I would just write down my list of duties, as my job duties, and what I hated about them. And it was like stuck them all cut and pasted into a Xerox book, and would sell those at shows and stuff. And it was great, it was just so fun, and for a long time we really enjoyed that success. And by the time we were making records, that changed a little bit because there were producers, and suddenly there was people that wanted to sell the band as a product, and that's always a problem.
Sure, that makes sense. So I have to ask, are you naturally... This question has two parts. Are you naturally a performer? Is it something that was always present in your life and that made you drew you to music maybe? Because you have a very soothing, calming, quiet presence. And I don't know if you would consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert, or maybe, a beautiful combination of the two things. But I'm just curious, seeing your show, seeing you perform, it's so authentic and awesome to watch and to behold and wonder about. Is that something that, you cultivated that was in you already, or is that something that you kind of manufactured as a decided performer? I wouldn't say it was a conscious decision one day that was going to be it. Sure. What I can say is, when I was a little kid, I was the shyest, introverted kid that there ever was, and I kind of had this weird thing. My hands were plagued with warts when I was a little kid, and my hands were all stuffed in my pockets, and I was like, all my report cards say this kid is shy and needs to come out of his shell, and he sucks at sports. Still true, and stuff like that. So I really was an introverted, shy kid, and couldn't wait to just get home and escape to the music and the 45s and drawing pictures and sort of being creative. I never for a second thought I would be a performer of any type. And then I got rid of the warts and became a popular 7th grader in the early 80s, and that changed everything, because suddenly people wanted to be friends with me and girls wanted to hold my hand, and I was discovering music on a different level and starting to see live bands, and it was, everything kind of opened up. And then by 16 just had the burning desire to I have to explore this. I don't know if I'm going to be good at it. And I can tell you, there's in no way would I say I was ever naturally inclined for any one performance in any way, especially in magic, which I'll get to. But my God, I wasn't, as John Lovick likes to say, I was certainly not a fish to water in the realm of magic. I had to work really hard for it, So I just had
there was something inside of me, like so many performers, like I call it the "Mom, look at me" thing, you know, over here, whatever it is.
I have to be seen.
Yeah, I have to be seen. I've got to, you know, this picture has to be looked at. This, you know, whatever it is, whatever you're doing, it has to be sort of like, I have to present this to the world needs to see this in some way. And I guess that was inside of me, and through playing music, I got to do that. But even when we were playing music, I was never good at. I was talking between songs unless I was, you know, loaded on drugs or had been drinking. What I want to like talk, you know, I just want to kind of do the songs and get through them. And so, by the time I got into Magic, it was a nightmare because I knew I wanted to reinvent myself as a magician at this one point, but I could speak. You know, I was one-on-one. I could communicate with other people, okay, and I could learn how to handle props as good as anybody who works really hard at that, you know, can and should. But I really had to learn how to speak and not freak out and not get covered in sweat. And I used to do this thing where my ass used to shake back and forth. Like my head would be still, but all the nerves would go right into my hips, and my butt would just go, just swing like a pendulum. And my wife noticed it early on. I was like doing these sets in the museum at the Magic Castle, and I was doing card tricks. I was like, I just wanted to do magic. I didn't know if it was good magic or bad magic, card magic, mentalism. I loved it all.
Yeah.
Delights. Just give me a trick.
Sure.
You know? And let me I'll figure out something. I'll write a little script and I'll work on it real hard, you know? And so I was doing that, and that's where all the nerves went. They just went like right there. And it was like you know, it was this process of elimination. Like, okay, what sucks the worst that I need to chop out? Okay, now we'll cut out this. Now we'll cut out and it's very slowly, with a very large, talented cast of friends and people in magic, I found a way, you know. And those people were great for technical advice and material choices and scripting ideas and things like that. But the performance, you know, like the idea of being a performer and communicating with the world, that's stuff that came from, you know, how I saw the world and how I wanted. When I realized that I was going to get into magic, and this was how, you know, I really wanted to be a magician. I knew that magic was a vehicle to communicate, like music was, or like doing prints or photography or whatever. It was totally an art form. So I was like, well, great. This is just going to be another outlet, and I get to, in some way, tell stories through presenting tricks, and that's you know, it's been a great. It's been one of the greatest aspects of my life ever since I became involved with it.
Do you think you're able to better communicate what you are feeling through your character and through your performance in Magic than you were with bandmates and, you know, a group and then producers and things on top of it after that?
The short answer is yes, because when you're in a band, you're up there with, you know, however many other musicians, and you're sharing an idea, and people focus on the drummer I was the singer and bass player, so there was a lot of focus on there. But generally, you're sharing idea. You're not one entity. You're several.
Sure.
At least, you know, let's just say 3 or more. And in Magic, you know, you write, you produce, you direct, you act. And my main collaborators from day one has been my wife, Tommy. And a lot of the ideas are ours, hers and mine, and combinations of things, and things that, you know, when I'm running around in my underwear at midnight, she's like, that's great. That should somehow be in the act. It seemed like the worst idea at the time. And then, like, we chuckle and go, oh, really? Okay, let's throw it up and see what happens. And so, anyway, the point is, I feel there's more creative latitude for me in Magic. I think if I was a singer-songwriter from day one, it was just my music, and I was just performing with maybe one instrument or just a
There's a
piano
lot more
player.
like rules and restrictions. In
There
music.
are, yeah, absolutely. But in magic, again, you write, produce, you direct, you act, and it's you from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Which is why there's not a lot of great magicians, because it's really hard.
Yeah.
You take each one of those aspects and break that down. My God, you better want to really do it,
Yeah.
or else you're going to be mediocre, or maybe you've got a knack for it and you can present a few tricks, and that's all fine and good. I'm certainly not knocking them, but
Sure.
I think that the magicians that I truly admire, like the big names that people know, like the Ricky Jays, Penn and Tellers.
Yeah. Everything is taken into account. Every
Everything
detail
is taken, yes. And you see that, and you walk away, and you from a performance, and it's no different than seeing a play or a movie or going to a rock show. You get, there's peaks and valleys, and there's all these things that,
Well, I think just, with the examples that you gave and you yourself, those people that are truly artists in the realm of magic are also interesting people that have a point of view and that have other interests outside of magic. Penn with his his own band and his ardent political stances, and then Ricky Jay and his plethora of exploits, and then you with your musical background and your acting and your things of that nature. It's just like people bring all of this other stuff to it that...
Yeah, I'm often surprised that more people that we don't see more of it in magic. You think, because I love talking to I love talking to creative people about process and why they do what they do. And
I didn't know if you cream and sugar.
no,
Is that
no, black is great.
Okay,
perfect.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it's perfect. Thanks. But I love talking with other performers and artistic people about the process. And in magic, I'll have a long conversation with someone, and I find out that they have all these interests and hobbies, and then I'll see a performance, and you see none of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, well, why don't if you're totally into cooking, if that's really your other passion, why aren't you making us an omelet while you're performing, or why aren't we seeing some aspect of that?
Sure.
And so often you do. I don't know why. Maybe it's. I guess I have thought about it. I think some people are there's fear is a part of really embracing things that we're interested in, and that can be something that holds people back sometimes. Mm-hmm. It's easier just to do the script that comes with the trick, or some variation therefore of that. Sure. So but on the other hand, for me, I love it. That's it. I'll see something about in my world that I want to write about. There'll be like, okay, I'm feeling regret about something, and that's been building up. So I want to write a piece about regret, and then at some point, I hope there's going to be a piece of material in magic that an effect that I can tie the idea of regret to, and those two things that'll be the piece.
Yeah. And
I try to do that with everything. With every piece I like, I'm like, well, first of all, what is it I want to say, and what magic effects do I think are interesting and cool, and do I want to see and mystify me the first time I saw them. That's the other thing. I think that as magicians, like, you go, oh well, I can't do a rising card or clippo or something that's we've seen a million times, but you really can. I think if you're performing for lay audiences, or you've got a captivating story, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But instead we see the invisible deck again and again, with some interesting takes, but
sure.
Mostly not.
I think that can be said for most things. I think that's you're speaking to a very universal truth.
Yeah, and same as in rock, with all the ideas, all the different ways to present yourself as a band, you hear this model that's been somehow works, and it's not necessarily a good model, but it's how we see the word. Design is the perfect example. Like, I was looking at crummy billboards for films. Sure. Hollywood movies are perfect, even a better example of this monstrous, overproduced, overbaked idea that somebody, that there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and we end up with this mess. And we see it again and again and again, and it won't be changing anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not into that.
That's a good thing.
I'm trying not. I mean, so I guess it's funny though. In acting, sometimes you have no control. Like if you act in a Hollywood movie or a TV show, you have no control over who the other actors are.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what kind of music they're going to put between your your vacant stare or your when you're walking down the street or whatever. And you can't choose the font of the credits.
Mm-hmm.
I want to.
It would be nice.
Yeah, and then, it's inspired me to make my own TV show, which is I'm doing. But my goodness, I mean, it's like it's different. So the Magic Act, going back to the Magic Act, you can do everything in that,
Yeah.
and you get to dress yourself, and you
Absolutely.
and script and all those things that are so fun.
And I think in magic, more than in many other creative pursuits, is that the audience is readily giving you the green light to do whatever you're going to do, dress however you're going to dress, maybe to negative effect for magic as a whole. But, people come to you and you go, oh, you're the magician. I'm going to accept anything you say, do anything you tell me to do. Get up on this chair. Okay, I'm standing on the chair. What now?
Mm-hmm.
You just do it because you're a magician.
Right.
And it's the same kind of thing. You're given so much freedom to create yourself.
No, it's absolutely
It's
absolutely true. Totally true.
And that must be very appealing to the true artists like yourself.
Well, I look forward to hopefully a long career in magic. I think in music, at least in a rock format that I was doing it doesn't age as well.
Mm-hmm.
You can be a photographer or a designer or an actor, and you can age
gracefully.
Hopefully,
yeah.
I mean, most do. Many do, I should say, but I think it's a lot more forgiving than in music, where I don't know. It seems to be most of the music that I like is geared towards the way that I felt when I was 10 or 13,
Nostalgic.
Yeah, nostalgic, So, but magic, I feel like I have a world of, there's a whole bunch of ideas I'll never get to in magic. I realize that, and meanwhile, I'll keep doing my performances and try to keep up with the way that I'm feeling inside, and sort of keep challenging myself as I get these ideas to put new pieces in and take out new pieces, and creating set lists. I just love. That's one of the major something I really enjoy doing, is sitting down and putting together a set. Whether it's a half an hour thing or a 45-minute thing, and see how that all goes, and run through it, and then put it up in front of an audience and see how it really goes. Because in your mind,
sure.
It's you can sort of bullet point how this is all going to look, but as you know, the audience ultimately tells you what works and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so based on audience interaction, pretty much, most of your life, how self-aware are you as far as like your appearance and your communication? Like, how much of your behavior is cultivated over those years? Like, the way that you blinked at me just now was like an elongated blink. That was like, I loved it. I don't know why, but it just it was really nice. So
yeah, I see.
Just
Well, I mean, really, I think truthfully, the idea is to get so far out of your head that you're as close to an outer body experience as you can have. Because that's who feels good? Me. When I can do that, I'm a high. That's in a level of elation that I want to get to every single time I perform. And how I get there is through so much preparation of the other side of that, is making sure that I'm groomed properly, that I can feel, my hair looks, it's not, I don't look like a crazy substitute teacher.
Sure.
And that, my bow tie's straight or whatever. And that all my props are where they need to be, and that my script is in order. and I might, there might be moments where I step away from the script to improvise, but all those things can only happen when I'm completely prepared, and then
you have that confidence,
and then I'm ready. And there's an acting. My first acting coach, who is actually one of my dear friends who married my wife and I, is a great poet. His name is S.A. Griffin. And at the beginning of his acting class, he used to say, concentration of energy away from yourself is the source of all creativity. And holy smokes, if that didn't make sense, nothing did. Because you would realize, in magic, it's all about the staring deeply into the props and the scissors and looking into the other person and having those experiences. And as it is in acting, we can watch a TV show or a movie and turn the sound down, and if someone's not doing their job as an actor, you have no idea what's going on. And you go, the words are coming out and they're saying things and they look pretty or whatever or interesting, but there's no...
They're not communicating.
Yeah, they're not communicating. So for me, the whole thing is, art is communication. It's as simple as that. That's the breakdown for me. So I just think to myself, well, how do I take all these ideas that they're constantly sort of, that comprise the act, and then when the moment it's your turn to walk out there, you want to be able to bang on all 8 cylinders and just be completely present and be ready to go. But I would say I'm very conscious of things like, we talked a little bit earlier about tempo and rhythm, and like the world that I try to go into when I'm working is slowed down than the rest of the fast-paced world that everyone's used to seeing, especially in a magic show. So you're at the big magic show, and all of a sudden everything's like this, and boom, bam, boom, and confetti, and oh boy, and here's one about the old internet, and let's talk about tweets, and things that I kind of just, I'm not interested in seeing when I'm on stage, and I don't want to be reminded of that stuff. So I try to, the world that I'm coming from is so different than that. And when I walk on stage, the first thing I do is I look at that audience and I think, all of you people are totally out of your minds. I'm the sane one. You're all crazy. Now, I know that it's pretty much, they're seeing the opposite of that.
Of course.
But for me, that's how I get the ball rolling. And that's how things really start to work. Because in real life, I don't know, I think things are pretty straightforward. I make a living at what I do. I love magic. I love being an entertainer. But I go to the bank and I have 3 dogs and I do my laundry and But the character that I portrayed doesn't do any of that.
For the listeners that may not have seen you, do you want to describe your character a little bit, just to give them some background on what we're talking about?
Yeah, I would say that it's the Herman Munster effect. If you've ever seen the Munsters, it's the TV show where these House of Ghouls have all these great personalities, and they're very eccentric in that they look and sort of act, and they see the normal world, as it were, in the Norman Rockwell 50, 60 sort of way, as totally bizarre and crazy. So what's normal to me is, I see you guys as completely nuts. So the most average looking, blonde 25-year-old woman that I bring on stage is a creature from outer space. And I look at her like, oh, I'm so sorry that you have to look like this in this world. And oh God, let me just get you through this piece here. But meanwhile, she's looking at me like, what's going on here? This guy looks like he could be a serial killer or something like that. And I guess there's aspects about physically the way I look, and
you have like I'm trying to. You're very handsome. You have like a piercing gaze, but you're also like not. You're not like a regular looking person. I don't know. I had the words earlier, but it's like a really like attractive otherness.
Well, thanks. Thanks. That's genetics, I guess. And
yeah, where does that come from? Where are your parents from?
Polak.
Okay.
I love saying that. Recently, I've been loving. I love answering that question with "I'm a Polak," because when I was a kid growing up in Burbank, my God, Polak jokes were just everywhere. And they're not cool to be Polish because Polacks are stupid. And so my dad told me we were Czechoslovakian. I was from Czechoslovakia, wherever that was. Whatever blip on the map that could have been when I was a little kid. I'm like, okay, if you say so. And then you're just European, Scottish, and English. Sure. Like it's like most of us, hybrid and mutt. But I'm mostly Polish, okay. And now I'm totally embracing the Polak thing. I'm like, yes, I'm a freaking Polak. Zabrecky.
You can curse. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, I'm a freaking Polak. So anyway, but that's I realized that when I was getting into magic, that was a tool that was going to work for me and not against me. Like I wanted to use the sort of gaunt, maybe visage that people see, and this, the ability that I have to I'm not afraid to break eye contact with people, and to use that as a force of as something to advance the show and make it more interesting than to just use it as a throwaway thing. And I'm also seeing that with magicians. I think, God, there's so many great things here. All the elements I like about this person are the things that I don't see when they're on stage. Yeah. It's baffling. Sometimes.
And I'm constantly thinking about how magic relates to other performance art, whether that be music or comedy or interpretive dance or things like that. And it all just sort of mixes together. But
yeah.
Bill Hicks he would say, less jokes, more me. And I think that should be, how magicians are. And that kind of speaks to the inner weirdness that you mentioned, Eugene.
I just say embrace your inner weirdo. And, by that I mean, I think I mentioned cooking earlier as an example, because some people think that's really weird. And they'd see, they might see a normal, let's just say an average-looking person come on stage, and for them to say, I love the culinary arts, and or in their own way, and sort of deliver a version of triumph or a metamorphosis or something, like to find a way to sort of tell us a story through that. And by story, that's a blanket statement.
Sure.
For me, I want the second the guy says, when I was 10 years old and it was snowing in Minnesota and my grandfather, I just want to run. I want to take my life and get the hell out of wherever I'm at. I want my life back. Yeah. That's it. And I want to quit magic. David Copperfield that has that thing, and you see that, and this is the moment where I'm going to pull your heartstrings. That's the moment where I want to just die,
tap out.
I'm done. I'd rather just be dead right now. I'm not kidding. I forgot where I was going with that. See, I derailed into like a negative creep. But telling your finding a way to finding those things that are interesting about yourself and putting them on paper and looking at them and then going, okay, this is how I'm gonna communicate to my audiences through this idea of these things that I'm passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, I got so pulled out of it by the air conditioner. Yeah.
Can you turn it off?
I don't know. Let me try. Set it to 86.
Oh, good.
I'll put it back later. Yeah. Just finding, what's everybody's different, and unfortunately, most magicians are the same. And it's people aren't taking that into effect. That's one of the reasons I don't, pursue performing anymore, is because I was aware enough to realize I'm not adding anything to this about myself. And so, rather than maybe go in the direction that you went, where you created a show and an act that, speaks for yourself, I'm much more of like an impromptu, I'll do a trick thing, but I'm going to be me this whole time, an elevated version of me, and it's a different kind of performance, and then I'll do a trick for you and that kind of thing. But it's
which is great. That's everything's right about what you just said. Magic is it's a huge sort of art form. And there's many ways. If someone's just doing a casual card trick, that can be so wonderful.
Sure.
Vanishing a silk in a thumb tip, that can be the most astonishing thing.
It's a different frame for the act. My act is like just having this experience with you, and then there's a magic trick in there.
Right.
Whereas your act is like a polished, beautiful
It's
presentation.
a world.
Of,
it's
exactly.
It's come into this world, disappear, hopefully lose yourself, forget about your troubles for 20 minutes or an hour, and get out of there and maybe think about it and see if maybe it'd be inspiring or I don't know. I don't know what, I try not to gauge too much about how people walk away from my show and feel too much. I do want them to feel something, but I don't want to. I think it's so art is so subjective, and it's different things to different people, and I love it when someone's touched by something that I did that is really small, and not some of the things are completely kind of over the top, and for very as magic effects have their big the ta-da moments.
Of course,
you have to do everything you can to make those work. But when there's a subtle thing, and somebody can get something from that, to me, I just feel like I've done my job, and everything's okay with the world.
Well, and that goes back to, first assessing every detail, and then being confident enough to improvise, because that's where that kind of golden magic happens.
Yes, correct.
I loved your act so much. And the person that we brought has like a huge crush on you.
The young lady, of course. Oh, she is.
She was our hairdresser. And we were like, we're going to see like the best magic show.
Oh my god!
And you were her first magic show, so she's totally spoiled now.
Wow, so nice to hear.
But
that's an honor.
Yeah, she absolutely loved
it
as a layperson, and we absolutely loved it as magicians.
Well, I think I mentioned this, but that's a very hard room to perform in, and not my. It's not much different than the space that we're in here. It's just not. Usually, I feel more confident going on stage with especially doing that's more of a parlor-y stand-up stage act on the Palace of Mystery. The Magic Castle is like the perfect framing for that.
Absolutely.
Not to discredit the Red Spade Theater, because I'm a huge fan of it. I think what Sebastian's doing is great, and he's supporting magic in a great way. But it's not the ideal
for your world.
For my world, yeah.
Sure.
Again, I've been at this point. I've been all over the world. I've performed in nightclubs in Japan and Australia and Italy and Scotland, London.
How well does your act translate to those other senses of humor, those other perspectives? Well? Yes.
Very well. Yeah, I would say the English, there's a sense of humor that I think that there's maybe a dryness that I naturally kind of want to engage the audience with, and they like that. That's effective for them. Same with I would say the Australians. It's kind of same thing. I did a week of shows over there over the summer. It was just wonderful, and I was just surprised at how much I received a lot of feedback, and there were a lot of discussions about the sense of humor and the beats between, like the what do I call them, the kind of the interstitial pieces, because I break down my act on paper. There's a routine that's let's call it card trick,
sure.
And then there's an interstitial piece where I'll do a joke or a gag, and there's another magic trick and another gag or interstitial piece or whatever, and that's how I build the act, because by the end of it, hopefully they remember all these funny moments and the magic as well. But you hear that over and over, you want the audience to remember you as much as the magic effects.
Of course. My favorite, personally, moment from your show, and I don't want to burn the joke, but we were like, I would fail you tonight if I didn't show you this, and then you.
Oh yes, of course, the photo of Barbara Streisand.
Oh, that's photo of Barbara Streisand.
Of course.
Well, that timing associated with that lit me on fire on the inside.
Oh, great.
It was so so perfect.
Thank you.
And it was so, like, not only was it odd, but it was like the ultimate non sequitur. It's like, why do you have a picture of Barbra Streisand in this strange, outfit from yesteryear?
Yeah.
To then show us in this moment, like, how does that fit into your... It's just, it opens up so many questions, as well as being a hilarious joke for your character.
Well, it's the funny thing about that picture is it's my biggest prop. And I'm loading all my stuff through the airport, and I'm walking through with my big Barbra Streisand. No, it folds up. But it's my largest prop and has been, and I hope it remains that way. But that's a note that I wanted the show to have for a long time. Early on, like that left turn that just hits that sudden dead end, and when people catch on to that as knowing that that's sort of the tone, and that the show's going to have those sort of dead ends. And they accept that, and they think that's funny. I go, all right, good. This is probably going to go okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've done performances where they look at it, and you hear and the whole audience is waiting for, like, what's wrong with this guy? There's not,
Yeah.
And those are not as fun.
Sure.
Well, they're actually fun on such a different level. Like, this is so terrible that I'm going to just see how terrible I can make this.
And then it becomes like another room to play in as far as your character is concerned.
Yeah.
He's just like, these weirdos don't understand.
Yeah. I mean, believe it or not, I did FISM. I performed at FISM over the summer. And the next day, I was at the hotel and I was getting breakfast, and a very, I would say, famous magician came up to me and in confidence said, you can take dance lessons. There's people that can show you really how to, because you've got something. And I thought, oh wow, okay. And I'm like, oh yeah, can I get their number? There is a dance.
Do you have someone in mind?
Yeah, exactly, like a waltz, like, and you're like, all right, so I really missed some mark. They interpreted that so differently. When I worked so hard to hide the one, and hide the fact that I can dance like most people can.
Yeah, of course.
Keep a beat.
Yeah.
That I was trying to invert wherever the one and the two and the four landed or whatever. So I was trying to hide those and zip around them. I thought, wow, man, people really get different things from your act.
Well, I think that's... Oh, man, I was just talking about this with somebody, but it's the idea... I think it was actually John Vanderput, Pip the Magic Dragon.
Oh, yeah,
I was talking to him about how magicians, come up and they, like, try to give you advice on your act. And they have, they're so out of I'm going to enjoy this performance thing that they're not even picking up on what's supposed to be happening in the context of the show. And it's like, oh, I'm watching from your fingers. And it's like, you're missing the point. Yeah. And so that kind of stuff is so hilarious to me.
It's the greatest.
Like, you completely missed it.
Yes.
It's like...
that's it. Especially here in Hollywood, every person has a gold pin on their lapel or purse or dress. Feels like they're qualified to tell you what's wrong with the act and how it can be better. And I would say 80%, 90% of that information has been completely unuseful and hilarious. In my own way, just like, well, this is funny. Great. And then, you okay, well, what are they doing that they feel like, they can give me this advice? I want to see what, and, and then sitting in the audience watching those acts, you just think, oh, this is just, we're
not even on the same level.
Yeah, we're on we're coming from such different places that I think I'll,
Yeah. Why does this person feel that they're qualified to tell me about my character that is a totally different shade of whatever? Yeah.
Funny stuff.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay. Well, so we've done almost an hour, and I want to keep going if you have time.
Yeah, I gotta be over at the Magic Club at 12:30.
Okay, it's 12 now.
Oh, great! You had another 15 minutes.
Okay,
is that cool?
Yeah, that's great.
Great. Yeah.
Okay, let me just take a look here. We can talk about. Are you allowed to talk about your show?
A little bit.
A little bit?
Love
well,
to.
Yeah, plug it
I
away.
would love to talk about it.
I would love to hear about it.
Uh,
And this won't come out until probably mid-January.
That's
so
fine.
I don't know.
I'm more eager to talk. For me, it's one of these things that at this point, when I talk about it, I know I'm going to see. It helps me see the finish line with things. Sometimes when I get things sort of out there, and I can talk and I talk about them in terms that I don't feel like I won't tell you the title of the show or anything.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
But I think around 4 years ago, I was doing. Let's see. Let me go back a bit. I'd say 10 years ago, I was performing at the Magic Castle, and John Lovick pulled me aside after one of my shows when I said, "Hey, why aren't you acting?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're doing these shows here, and I think you could put this on the screen." And I had never thought about it. And for the first 7 or 8 or 10 years I was in Magic, my only goal was to be on stage and perform for groups of people. I wanted it to be an ephemeral thing. People came in and they saw this thing, and it wasn't taped, and it wasn't going. I mean, YouTube wasn't what it is now, but
sure.
It wasn't that. It wasn't for that. It wasn't about that. It wasn't about being famous or having recognition or
live
getting
performance,
hits.
performing in the shady nightclub. And,
it was performing in the basement of the Magic Castle. To me, good, done, check, artistic, license. People are seeing this thing; it's working, fine. So, fast forward to, I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot. I'll give it a shot. Why not? John's usually right about things, and my wife was super encouraging, and I jumped into community theater and kind of learned how to tell a story on stage after a few years, and just did it the hard way like everybody else does, and enjoyed the process. And through all that, the internet is changing and the world is changing, and suddenly I realized that I could reach a larger audience by having a program where this character lives. This world is. It would be a great challenge to take this world that we worked so hard that works in nightclubs and theaters, to put him I call him in the box, because I don't know what it is yet. We don't know whether it's going to be a network television show or it's going to be a webisode series.
Sure.
We don't know that yet. So it's the box. And all of a sudden, all these ideas started coming to my wife and I, to my co-creator, and we have a couple friends in show business that were pushing us along in the right way, and being very, very encouraging. And a few months back, we procured some funding to make this pilot episode of our show. And the show's either going to be a 22-minute pilot or broken down into 3 webisode series, which will have like a beginning, middle, and end, like so many TV shows have in their own way. If you think about the way that a show breaks down before a commercial break as a cliffhanger, and then another
between,
and so that's essentially what we're doing. And we're having the times of our lives doing this. It is the greatest fun I've ever had.
Oh wow!
And it's great fun because there's no one telling us that we can't do what we want to do. Yeah. My wife has excellent taste. She knows the character better than I do, and so we're creating this world where he lives and what's happening around him, and it's just a complete blast. We've shot 4 days, and so far all the people that we've asked to sort of be involved, everyone said yes.
Wow. We
have cameo spots for Dan and Dave. They don't know it yet. If you're listening, we'll be calling you. And it's just super exciting. So now the next challenge is knowing that I can perform this character live on stage and be a popular performer at the Magic Castle and at Magic conventions, and do these sort of small theaters worldwide. I want to see what that looks like, and working with musicians that I respect to do soundtrack, and an editor that I think is wonderful, and just getting the general sense of what we're doing. It feels to me like when I was 15 going, wow, I'm going to start a band. How is that going to work? and it feels it's making me inspired every day just to get up and get out of bed, because I know that like that's the next thing that I want to see happen.
Wow, that's so exciting. I'm excited about it, and
Thanks.
I don't really even know a lot about it or anything about it, but
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where I could talk more about it, but the point is,
sure, of course,
as Francis Bacon, the great artist Francis Bacon, always said, the artist's job is to always deepen the mystery, deepen the mystery, and so it's one of those things where I just want to say, okay, world, here it is.
Yeah, make of it what you will.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to continue this. The way that we're working on it is great, and I there was a couple years ago I pitched the idea to a television network, and my God, they looked at me like I had two heads. And at the end of it, I felt awful, and I'm sure there's no way that they felt good about it.
Sure.
This is like a big presentation slideshow of all these, scenes and ideas and vignettes that we had to sort of illustrate this. And I just went, this is clearly not the way to do this. This has to be a DIY punk. And when I talk about punk earlier, I mean doing things with your own vision in your own way. Single-minded. I don't care what anyone else thinks. This is how I'm going to do this. That is punk to me. It's not wearing a mohawk and getting a spike bracelet and walking on Hollywood Boulevard. Not that kind of punk. So it's the punk ethos that is really driving the show, and it's I think by May or June we ought to have something that's viewable, at least to us, and then we'll see if we can. The idea is that it's complete, and we find a place for it where they're going to say, yes, we see this world, and that we saw, like you can see Elvira's world or Pee Wee Herman's world. It's its own thing, and I guess I'm sure networks have tried to mess with that, with that model or their model, but in our case, we want it just to feel so solid that they'll give us a home and let us continue to work on it. Yeah, because I in some ways I've been a little bit burned out about traveling. I'd like to stay here and work. If I could have my way with the world and win the game of life, I think I would stay in LA for the most part, travel a few times a year, really work on the show, and have it be as magical and feel the same elation that I feel when I'm performing on stage, and without having to go to the LAX twice a week.
Oh man. Well, thank you so much. I would love to do this again, because I'd love to talk about Tommy. I'd love to talk about the characters some more and really get into it.
Man, so easy and great. I'd be totally honored.
Okay, cool.
Do a follow-up or something.
Yeah. Down the road, closer to maybe showtime.
Yeah, maybe in March or April. Would be really cool.
Yeah.
Or when it's done. Maybe when it's done.
Oh, that'd be cool, yeah.
Yeah. Then you could see it and we could talk about it.
Oh, I would love
Before
that.
and after. It's got to be after, I would say.
Yeah.
Great, man.
Well,
I must say, you're a great interviewer. Really,
thank
really
you
nice.
so much.
Really,
I really appreciate it.
I felt very comfortable. And
I'm really glad.
who else do you have coming up, did you say? Or are you still working on?
So we have, I just recorded with Piff the Magic Dragon.
How was that?
It was a great time.
Yeah.
Mr. Piffle shit on the floor during the interview. And
Was he? Now, how did he get along with Hilton?
Oh, he wasn't here. I went to. He was in San Diego performing, and so I went to his hotel.
Gotcha.
It was a lot of fun.
So Mr. Piffles isn't hotel trained.
No. Well, and it's hard because he's performing at the comedy club and people are feeding him food.
Oh, yeah. Not his choice. Yeah, it's like.
But it was fun. He's very funny. He has like a succinctly British humor, which I am in love with. And so it was just a ton of fun. And you can kind of, I'd be interested to hear when it goes live for people to listen to it and kind of hear him open up. Because it was like, he's a very introverted person. And so he got more comfortable with me as we went along. And it was a lot more fun and up near the end of the thing. Great.
I would love to hear that. I've never seen an interview with him. My friends are out on tour with him right now. They're a magic act called Conjure from Denver, and they're like doing production, and she's on stage with him. This girl called Cole. So that's great. I'm so happy for his success.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
He's one of the maybe the only guy that's made it out of one of those crummy talent shows and had it work for him in a way where he didn't win, but he's like kind of ruling the world.
Oh yeah,
you know, doing the performing arts centers. That's like the dream of every performer because it pays well and you know, for a lot of reasons. But good for him. So you got Piff and who else?
Will Houston.
Will.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Did you already talk to him?
I haven't talked to him yet. We were going to do it when he was in town, and that didn't work out. And so we're going to do a Skype interview probably next week.
Did you see him at the Magic Castle?
No, I didn't get to.
It was wonderful.
I heard from
he
a
is
bunch of people.
great. He is so much fun, and he's an interesting guy to watch. You know, his metronome. He's slow too, but it's that dry British humor that you know gets you every time.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, thanks so much again.
Yeah, great. My pleasure. I'm gonna step in the restroom and then see if I can step on this for a second.